A stranger with an apron did in 10 minutes what doctors couldn't in 10 months. The rain hit the windshield like it had something to prove. Steady, sharp, and loud enough to drown out the music Nathan barely remembered turning on. Somewhere off I-40 in Arkansas, between Little Rock and nowhere in particular, he took the next exit. Not because he was hungry, not even because he was tired, but because the silence in the car had stretched too long. In the passenger seat, his daughter sat quietly, her head tilted toward the window. Madeline, 8 years old, tiny for her age, with long brown hair that fell over her shoulders like a curtain. Her wheelchair was folded in the back of the Tesla, where a chauffeur usually sat. But Nathan had left all that behind for this trip. The money, the mansion, the staff. He didn't even bring a driver, just him, Madeline, and the road. He spotted the diner by accident. A weathered sign that read, Jackie's Kitchen, in chipped red letters. The eye flickering like it was unsure if it belonged there. The parking lot was nearly empty. A few trucks, one van, a rusted-out Buick. That was it. Nathan parked close and glanced at the digital clock. 3:12 p.m. Late for lunch. Early for dinner. Good. Less people. Let's go inside, Mads, he said softly, his voice cracking from not being used. She didn't answer, just blinked slowly. He got out, opened the back, and carefully unfolded her chair. He lifted her gently, like he'd been doing since the accident, and set her down in it with practiced ease. Inside, the place smelled like hot grease and coffee. The floor creaked in spots, the booths were torn in places, and the ceiling fan wobbled just enough to make you nervous. But it was warm, and more importantly, it was quiet. They sat in the booth closest to the window. Nathan glanced at the laminated menu, but Madeline's eyes never moved. She just stared at the tabletop, tracing her finger along a stain no one had bothered to clean. He didn't push. He never did anymore. A few minutes passed before someone approached. "Hey there, welcome to Jackie's," a voice said, bright but calm. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" Nathan looked up. She wasn't what he expected. Late 20s, maybe early 30s, black woman, tall, strong-looking, but not in a way that was hard. Her name tag read Tasha, but the warmth in her eyes said more than the plastic ever could. "Water for her," Nathan said, "and coffee, black." Tasha gave a small nod. Then she looked at Madeline. "Hey, sweetie," she said, crouching slightly to meet her eye level. "You like pancakes? We've got blueberry today." Madeline didn't respond. Her face stayed blank. Tasha didn't push. "Okay," she said gently. "I'll bring you a plate just in case you change your mind." Nathan watched her walk away. He didn't know why, but something about her voice made the air feel easier to breathe. He rubbed his temples and exhaled. He wasn't here to meet people. He wasn't here to open up. He just wanted to get back on the road and keep running from everything he hadn't been able to fix. But something about that waitress made it hard to keep his guard up. Tasha came back with a glass of water and a small ceramic mug. She set the water down in front of Madeline, careful not to startle her, and then placed the coffee in front of Nathan. No noise, no clatter, just clean, smooth movements, like someone who had been doing this for years without ever needing to rush. Then, without asking, she slipped a napkin under Madeline's hand and gently straightened the girl's spoon. Nathan noticed. So did Madeline. Tasha smiled. "I brought the blueberry pancakes. I didn't put syrup on yet. Some folks like to do that part themselves." Nathan leaned back slightly. "She might not eat." Tasha didn't blink. "That's okay, but if she does, at least they'll be warm." Madeline glanced at the plate. Barely, but it was enough. Tasha reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small container of syrup. "We got the good kind, real stuff, not the fake plastic bottle stuff." She poured just a little on the edge of the plate and looked at Madeline again. "If you want more, just say so, or blink, or nod, or breathe funny. I'll figure it out." That made Nathan chuckle. Just once, short and sharp, like his chest wasn't used to the sound. Tasha raised an eyebrow and grinned. "See? You've still got a laugh in there somewhere." He shook his head. "That obvious?" She glanced down at Madeline. "I got a little sister who used to shut down like that. Doctors said she was just quiet, but sometimes it ain't about shyness. Sometimes kids shut down because the world got too loud." Nathan watched her carefully. "What's your sister's name?" Samira, Tasha replied. She's 12 now, talks a mile a minute these days. Wouldn't believe it if you saw her back then. He wanted to ask more, but didn't know how. He hadn't had a real conversation with a stranger in months, maybe longer. Tasha moved over to Madeline again. You want me to help cut them for you? She asked, like she'd known her forever. Still no words, but Madeline gave the tiniest of nods. Nathan's heart almost stopped. Tasha noticed it too, but didn't make a scene. She just smiled, picked up the knife, and gently started slicing the pancakes into small, neat pieces. Then came something neither of them expected. Madeline reached out. Her hand trembled, but it moved. She picked up a piece with her fingers and brought it to her mouth, chewed slowly, then looked at Tasha and smiled. Nathan blinked hard, then wiped his face like he was just tired. But it wasn't just that. Tasha didn't say anything. She just gave Madeline a wink, stood up and said, I'll give you 2 a minute. Nathan called out before she walked away. Thank you. She turned her head just a bit. You're welcome, Mr. Rowan, he said quickly, using his middle name. No need to complicate things. Not yet. Tasha gave a small smile and disappeared into the kitchen, but Nathan couldn't stop staring at the empty space she left behind. The pancakes were half gone now. Madeline wasn't in a rush. She ate slowly, methodically, like her muscles were relearning what they used to know. Nathan didn't move much. He just watched her chew, blink, rest her hand. Every now and then she'd pause, look at the syrup, then grab another piece with that same shaky grip. He hadn't seen her feed herself since December, since the hospital, since her mother's funeral. A bell rang faintly from the kitchen door as Tasha walked back out, a notepad in her hand, pen behind her ear. She glanced around the diner, still empty, then walked back over to their booth and rested her arms on the divider. She's doing good, she said quietly, not to startle Madeline. Nathan nodded. I'm still trying to figure out how. Patience, Tasha said. Most folks don't think they have it, but it's there. Sometimes you just gotta wait long enough to see it. Nathan took a sip of his coffee, still warm, but barely. She hasn't smiled like that in months. Tasha didn't say anything. She just looked at him for a moment, not in a nosy way, just observing. You're on the road, she finally said, but you ain't traveling for fun. No, Nathan said, not even close. He paused, unsure why he was opening up. Maybe it was the way Tasha didn't push. Maybe it was because she didn't ask how much money he made, or what kind of car he drove, or what his name meant in the business world. He glanced down at his daughter again. She's my only child, he continued. Her mom... She passed away 6 months ago. Car accident. Madeline was in the back seat. Tasha's expression softened. She didn't offer condolences. She didn't gasp. She just listened. That was more comforting than any apology could have been. Doctors say she's not brain damaged, Nathan said, but her motor skills are limited now. PTSD. The kind they don't really treat in kids. I tried everything. Therapists, specialists, equipment, but she barely talks. Won't make eye contact, won't even eat. But she's eating now, Tasha said, glancing at the nearly empty plate. Nathan looked away, clearing his throat. Yeah, she is. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just full. Then Tasha asked, You ever take her somewhere that's not sterile, not padded and clinical? I took her to a private center in Palo Alto last month. They had the best reviews. Tasha smiled gently. That's not what I meant. He looked confused. I mean somewhere normal, she said, where nobody's trying to fix her, where she can just be. Nathan blinked. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. Tasha pulled out the pen behind her ear and flipped over her notepad. She scribbled something down and tore off the sheet. She handed it to him. What's this? He asked. Park, she said. 2 miles from here. Not fancy, not loud. Got a creek and ducks. Usually empty this time of year. You take her there before sunset. I bet she'll surprise you again. He stared at the paper. Why are you doing this? Tasha shrugged. She smiled. That's a big deal. He nodded slowly. There wasn't anything else to say. Then, for the first time in months, Madeline made a sound. A soft one, but real. She was giggling. Nathan turned just in time to see Tasha holding up a jelly packet like it was a puppet, doing a silly voice. Don't eat me. I'm just a jelly, she said. Madeline giggled again, louder. Nathan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he did both. But right then, he realized the road trip he'd started wasn't about leaving something behind. It was about finding what he'd lost. The diner got quiet again after the laughter faded. Madeline leaned into her chair, more relaxed now. Her fingers toyed with the last piece of pancake, smearing a bit of syrup on her palm. Nathan didn't stop her. He just watched, quietly amazed. Tasha came back and slid into the booth across from them, surprising him. She didn't bring a tray, no coffee pot, no menus, just herself. She looked around, then said, "We don't get many folks like you in here." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Folks like me?" She smirked. "You dress like your clothes are expensive but boring on purpose. You've said about 20 words since you walked in, and you call her Mads like it's supposed to cover up a lot of pain." Nathan didn't laugh, but he didn't walk out either. He leaned back in his seat, sizing her up. "And what kind of folks do you usually get?" "Truckers, retired teachers, teen moms, a couple guys who think I'm going to flirt for a bigger tip." She glanced at Madeline. "Not little girls who don't talk, or dads who look like they haven't slept in a year." Nathan nodded slowly. "I didn't come here to be seen." "Well, too bad," she said, sipping from a cup she must have grabbed without him noticing. "You are." He studied her again, then asked, "How old are you?" 33, she said, "but I feel like I've lived 3 lives already." "And you work here full-time?" "2 jobs, she corrected. "This one's just steadier. Nights, weekends, doubles when I can get them." "What's the other job?" "Overnight caregiver, assisted living center up the road." She sipped again. "I change sheets, help folks get to the bathroom, hand out meds. It's not glamorous." Nathan nodded. "Why not find something else?" Tasha tilted her head. "Because life doesn't always hand you options, Mr. Rowan. Sometimes it just hands you bills." He smiled at that, not because it was funny, but because it was true. "You mentioned a sister," he said. "Yeah, and a brother, and a grandma who's one bad cough away from needing round-the-clock care." She leaned forward. "That's why I notice things, like a little girl who won't look up, or a man who thinks if he keeps driving, the pain might stop chasing him." Nathan swallowed hard. She didn't say it with judgment, just clarity, like she'd seen this kind of pain before, maybe lived it in her own way. "You want to know what the scariest part of losing someone is?" she asked. He didn't answer. "It's not the day they're gone. It's the day after. When you wake up and realize the world kept spinning and nobody's asking if you're okay anymore." Nathan stared at the table. The rain had stopped outside, but the light hadn't come back yet. Gray skies pressed against the windows, quiet and soft. He cleared his throat. "I used to build things, big things, teams, companies, strategies. Now I can't even get her to look at me." Tasha reached out and tapped the edge of Madeline's plate. "She looked at me because I wasn't trying to fix her." Nathan stayed quiet. Tasha leaned back. "You ever just sit next to her and let it be quiet? No expectations, no agenda?" He shrugged. "It doesn't feel like enough." "It is," she said. "For her, it is." He looked at Madeline again. She was staring at the syrup now, rubbing her thumb through it like finger paint, making messy little swirls. "She used to paint with her mom," he whispered. "Before—" "I know," Tasha said gently, but Nathan didn't ask how, because deep down, he could tell. Some people just know how to carry broken things without dropping them. The lunch rush never came. A couple of guys walked in around 4, ordered burgers, and sat near the back. Tasha waved at them, jotted their orders, and returned to Nathan's booth without skipping a beat. Madeline was now leaning into her dad's side, head against his ribs, fingers still sticky with syrup. Tasha sat back down across from them, this time with a glass of water for herself. She looked tired, but not in a way that begged for sympathy, just the tired of someone who carried too many things too often. "Don't take this the wrong way," Nathan said suddenly, "but you don't belong here." She grinned. "You mean this place?" "Yeah, the diner, the double shifts, the graveyard job. You're too smart for it." She looked out the window, thinking for a second. "Maybe, but life doesn't always care about smart. Life just keeps handing you things, and sometimes you're too deep in it to ask if it's fair." Nathan nodded. "What did you want to do?" before all this? Tasha didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to Madeline, then to her water, then back. I wanted to be a nurse, she said finally. NICU. I like the little ones. I always thought if I could help a baby live, that'd be enough. What happened? My mom passed when I was 19. Cancer, fast. Left me with 2 younger siblings and a grandma who couldn't walk without help. There went college. There went plans. Everything became about survival after that. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on the table. And you never got another chance? I applied to nursing school 3 times, got in twice, couldn't afford the second semester either time. He sat back, a heavy silence sitting between them now. You ever get bitter? He asked. She shook her head. I get tired, I get frustrated, but bitter? No. Bitterness eats people up, makes them mean. I don't want to be that. He studied her face again, not in a creepy way, just trying to read the layers. Her calm wasn't fake. It wasn't performative. It was the kind of peace people don't get unless they've lived through hell and chose not to let it change them. I've got money, he said. Tasha held up a hand, not angry but firm. Don't. You don't even know what I was going to say. I do, she said, because I've heard it before, just not from someone like you. You think the answer is always money. I get it. That's you. The diner faded behind them as Nathan wheeled Madeline along the cracked sidewalk toward the car. The clouds had started to break, just a little, casting a faint gold light across the wet pavement. The kind of light that only shows up after a long storm. He clicked her seatbelt, shut the door, then sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. He didn't move. Madeline looked over at him, blinking slowly, her head tilted slightly like she was trying to read his mind. I'm sorry, he whispered. She didn't respond. Of course she didn't, but she was listening. He could feel it. I know I messed this up, he said, staring at the steering wheel. Not just today, not just the trip, all of it. I didn't know how to be your father after she died. I thought, if I could fix everything, then maybe it would feel normal again. But I was wrong. He glanced over again. She was still staring, still listening. He turned the key and pulled out slowly, the paper Tasha had given him resting on the dash. He followed the directions. 2 right turns, 1 blinking light, then a gravel road that led to an old, wooded park. The place was quiet. No other cars, just the sound of tires crunching gravel and the wind rustling low trees. He parked under a crooked oak tree and went around to open the door. Let's try it, he said. She didn't smile, but she didn't resist. He lifted her gently, wheeled her toward a wooden bench overlooking the creek. Ducks waddled nearby, quacking softly, leaving little wakes in the muddy water. Nathan unfolded a blanket and laid it across her lap. I used to bring you and your mom to places like this, he said softly. We'd have these dumb picnics where she'd forget napkins and you'd spill juice everywhere. Madeline blinked, her mouth twitching just slightly at the edges. She used to sing. Not well, but loud. He laughed. This one was soft, almost ashamed. I haven't talked to you about her, not really. I thought keeping busy would help. He pulled a photo from his wallet. Worn, edges curled, the kind of picture you don't mean to carry forever, but somehow always do. Her mom, laughing, holding Madeline in one arm, flipping pancakes with the other. Your mom loved blueberry pancakes, he said. She said they were happy food, said the blueberries were like little pockets of joy. Madeline's hand twitched again. Nathan reached over slowly, held it. I miss her too. They sat there for a while, not speaking, just breathing. Birds chirped, ducks shuffled, the water kept moving. Then something small happened. Madeline tilted her head, pointing her chin slightly toward the creek. Her hand reached for the photo in his lap. He gave it to her. She held it like it was glass, stared for a long time. Then, voice thin, scratchy, barely more than a breath, she whispered, pancakes. Nathan's whole body froze. She said it again, just a little louder. Pancakes. He looked at her, stunned, eyes wet. Yeah, sweetheart. Pancakes. She smiled, really smiled this time, and Nathan, he broke. Quietly, completely. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the way a man does when he's been holding in a flood for too long. He leaned forward, forehead resting against her tiny hand, his voice shaky. "I hear you. I hear you." But in that moment, he finally understood. Love doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it looks like silence finally breaking. They sat at the park until the light started to dim, the sun dipping behind the trees like it was sneaking off without a sound. Nathan didn't say much after Madeline spoke. He didn't want to push it, didn't want to turn a miracle into a memory too quickly. He just let her sit with the photo, tracing the corners with her fingers. On the drive back toward the highway, something in him shifted. He didn't know what it was exactly, just that the weight he'd been carrying didn't feel quite as heavy anymore. Not gone, but different. He turned the car around. Back at Jackie's kitchen, the parking lot was nearly empty again. He pulled into the same spot, opened the door, unfolded the chair. "You okay going back in for a minute?" he asked Madeline. She didn't respond, but when he reached for her, she lifted her arms. That was enough. Tasha was behind the counter wiping down salt shakers when she saw them walk in. She didn't look surprised, just nodded at him like she already knew he'd be back. "I had a feeling," she said, walking over. Nathan smiled. "We went." She looked at Madeline. "How was it?" Madeline hesitated, then, with effort, whispered, "Ducks." Tasha's smile nearly split her face. "Yeah, they were loud today, huh?" Nathan leaned on the booth. "Listen, I wanted to say thank you. You already did." "No, I mean it. You didn't have to sit with us. You didn't have to help her. You didn't have to give a damn." Tasha shrugged. "Most people don't look. I try to." "I want to help," he said, eyes locked on hers. "Not charity, not pity, just help." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "With what?" "You said you applied to nursing school twice." "I did. If you applied again, I could cover it. Quietly, no attention, no obligations, just a clean slate. You get in, I pay. You don't owe me a thing." Tasha didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then she said, "Why?" Nathan looked down at Madeline, then back up. "Because I watched someone you didn't know change her life in 20 minutes. Without a lecture, without a plan, without even asking her name." He paused. "And because I've spent years surrounded by people with power, and I've never seen one of them do what you did in that booth." She crossed her arms, leaning back slightly. "You know how many folks say they want to help, but make it all about them?" "I do," Nathan said, "and that's why I'm not asking for anything in return." Tasha looked at Madeline again. The little girl stared back, eyes tired but calm. No fear, no tension. That meant more to her than the offer. "You put the money in a trust," Tasha said finally. "You let my little brother's name be on it too. He wants to be a paramedic. He just doesn't know how to dream big yet." Nathan nodded. "Done." She stuck out her hand. They shook. No contracts, no signatures, just trust. "You ever need pancakes again," she said, "you come see me." "I will." They stood there in the quiet, not strangers anymore, but both of them knowing some debts aren't measured in dollars. They're paid in dignity. A week later, Nathan sat alone on the back porch of a modest rental house outside Flagstaff, Arizona. No mansion, no security gates, just a wooden deck, 2 chairs, and a view of the hills. Madeline was inside, asleep on the couch with a sketch pad in her lap, crayons scattered on the carpet, a half-finished drawing of ducks, and a woman with an apron. He smiled at it every time he passed. Nathan took a sip of cold coffee and checked his phone. Not for emails, not for news alerts, just one thing. A photo came through. Tasha, in navy blue scrubs, standing in front of a community college sign, holding up a student ID. Her little brother beside her, flashing a peace sign with a big crooked grin. No caption, no hashtags, just a single word, beginning. Nathan stared at it longer than he meant to. He thought back to all the speeches he'd sat through, keynotes, conferences, high-level meetings where people in expensive suits used words like impact and vision while stepping over the janitor on the way to their car. They all talked about legacy, but not one of them ever handed a stranger a warm plate of pancakes just because it might make a little girl smile. That's what stayed with him. He tapped on Madeline's photo album, opened a video from 3 nights ago. It was short, just 5 seconds. but it said more than any boardroom could. Her voice, soft but clear, saying, "Daddy, duck says quack." He had played it 20 times already, maybe more, and every time it made him remember what mattered. Not the money, not the recognition, but the little moments, the mess, the connection, the people who show up when no one's looking. Madeline stirred inside, then called out, "Dad!" He stood up fast, rushed in like it was the most important meeting he'd ever had. "I'm here," he said, sitting beside her. She looked up, groggy. "You forget my juice?" He laughed. "Never." She leaned into him, her voice small. "I want pancakes tomorrow." He kissed the top of her head. "Then pancakes it is." As she drifted back to sleep, he grabbed his phone and typed out a new note. To Tasha, "You were right. The world doesn't need saving, just more people who notice." He paused, then added, "Thanks for seeing us." He hit send, and for the first time in a long time, Nathan felt rich. Not in the numbers kind of way, but in the way that stays with you when everything else fades. In a world that rewards noise, he finally learned to listen. In a life that taught him to fix, he finally learned to feel. And in a moment that felt small to everyone else, a waitress, a father, and a little girl taught each other how to live again. Because kindness doesn't need a stage. It just needs someone to show up. Sometimes the most powerful things aren't spoken loudly. They're whispered through gestures, built in silence, and shared through simple moments, like pancakes, patience, and the kind of presence you can't fake. If this story moved you, share it. Not for views, not for clicks, but because somebody out there might need to hear that being present, really present, can change a life. And if you are lucky enough to meet someone who sees you when you're hurting, don't forget to say thank you.